Hey, in November of 2023, the Unify Dayton core team hosted its first Leaders Summit for the city of Dayton. It was my role during that time to share this network of networks framework for city network transformation, thriving and interconnected networks for Kingdom Come. So I about memorized it. And even though it was about a month ago, what you're about to listen to is kind of me recounting that almost verbatim with a couple other details in there to provide some context. So I hope that this is informative to you to help you understand and to feel what it might have been like to be one of the 130 plus leaders who got to sit in the room and then be able to be interconnected and connect with so many people throughout the day so that they can also dream with us for 2070 for Dayton, and then also interconnect to see how we can make it in Dayton as it is in heaven. Thank you for listening.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Heminger, and I serve with an organization called Story Connect, where we believe society's greatest and our most personal issues aren't alleviated because of lack of resources, rather a lack of connection. That we don't have a resource problem, we have a connection problem. So we seek to make and nurture strategic connections with God and others for sustainable impact. Now, thus far today, we have heard about the why and the what of Unify Dayton, and I'm going to share a little of the how. Now, many people would look at Unify Dayton and call it something. They might call it City Network Transformation. And that's what I call it, this network of networks. And that is the how behind this framework. In fact, the reason why they do that is because city network transformation has been around for a long time and around with 80 different transformation engines in cities around the country. In San Francisco, it's called Transform the Bay. In Houston, it's called Houston Responds. In DC, it's called One Heart DC. In Kansas City, it's called Love KC. And there's a lot of fours. There's for Charlotte, for Richmond, for Evansville. And our closest neighbor is for Columbus. And the four stands for Uniting the Church of Columbus for the City of Columbus. And a couple of us from the core team of Unify Dayton went to their Leaders Summit that they have twice a year a couple of months ago. And as we were sitting there, it was very similar to this, hundreds of leaders, and one of their leaders casted this vision. Hundreds of thriving and interconnected networks. Now that, to me, blew my mind, and I was so captivated by it. And it was something I've been thinking about and reading about and learning through the city network transformation space. So, what is a network? This is how I very simply define it. A network is a group of people who care about the same thing, connected and working together for a better outcome in that context as it is in heaven. Now today we're going to be discussing and learning about and embodying three kinds of networks, and then there's a catch-all network. Now those are geography, cause, workplace, and then the catch-all is called affinity. So geography. Since we are dreaming for Dayton in 2070, I'm going to use that language. What is God's dream come true for blank? For West Dayton. What is God's dream come true for West Dayton or East Dayton or North or South? Now that is a network of networks focused on geography where people come and they dream and they leverage their time, talent, and skills and what they're working on, and they align and they say, let's do this together for a better outcome in West Dayton as it is in heaven. Now, Hope for Communities through Miami Valley Leadership Foundation has been stewarding this vision for a long time, and they're going to come up here pretty shortly, and they're going to give you a deep dive into what that is and how those work. Now, the next kind of network is a cause network, and I'll there's as many causes as there are populations. When you filled out, your attendance to come here, there were about 14 different umbrella causes: human trafficking, child welfare, youth and child mentorship, leadership, so many. And so I'll give you an example. Right now in Montgomery County, there are about 40 phone calls made every single day to Children's Services, where on the other line is suspected abuse and neglect of a child. Now that is hard to imagine. We know that there's something going on, there's something wrong there, and we know that there's many other phone calls that could be made. Now that's, I think, about 13,000 phone calls a year, and that whittles down to about 700 kids in care. Now those 700 kids in care are in foster homes, group homes, and 50 of them are adoptable. Right now, 50 of them, their parent is the government. So that's the problem, and that's the solution. Is when there is a group of people, not-for-profits, church leaders, foster parents, group home leaders, who come together to work together and be connected for a better outcome. So our network, the Child Welfare Network of Greater Dayton, started about 18 months ago, and we have about 60 people on our list. We meet about monthly. We've put in a lot of hours and miles together. And both locally and nationally, we've come up with 5 big goals. And the first one is the most easy to understand, that one day there's more families waiting for kids than kids waiting for families. Because right now, there's not. And we know that there can be, because we've seen it happen and know it can happen in other communities and other counties. If you watch the Stand Sunday video, you'll feel this, and you might feel this call to action to help people find their way to the children and help those children find those ways to loving and supportive homes. But we also know that 50% of foster parents quit within the first year. So we know that we can't just throw folks into that so that there's more families. We have to support them, because when we support them with 2 specific strategies, that retention rate increases from 50% to 90%. So our second goal is more than enough support for all those families that are caring for kids that are not biologically theirs. So that's the Child Welfare Cause Network, and there, again, there's networks that could be formed around children and youth mentoring, human trafficking. There's 3,000 unduplicated women that are sold into slavery every month in Dayton. But, it was interesting. In this conference, there's so many of you that chose leadership as your top cause, and you'll go to that time to connect. And I was thinking about that, pondering that, and then I was saying, yes, that cause. Imagine if there was leadership in Dayton as it is in heaven. Might that mean that every leader is healthy and getting healthier? That they are winning at home first and winning at work? How healthy might our organizations be? Because as leadership goes, so goes the organization. Now, the third kind of network that we'll talk about is workplace, and embody that. And our friend Chuck, who's been doing this work for about 20 years in Cincinnati, will share this thought and this vision. And this is the idea. What if every follower of Christ brought their Sunday faith to Monday work? That they were on mission, that we know what the gathered church is, but the scattered church, where they bring light and love and connection, on mission, abiding with God in their workplace. What might that look like? So I take that big idea of workplace, and I like to whittle it down into smaller, more manageable networks around industries or organizations. So imagine a highly interconnected network of Christian healthcare providers who were abiding with the great physician as they were linked arms with their fellow healthcare providers to bring the deepest of physical, emotional, and spiritual healing to their patients. How might that transform Dayton? Now, I have another silly idea. You know, my wife is a counselor. I believe there should be a Christian mental health network of providers and practitioners. That's another one. But there's a lot of lay counselors out there. You know, those lay counselors are often called barbers and cosmetologists, beauticians, salons, bartenders. What if there was just a network for the folks like that so that they could learn the peaceful art of presence together? Now, there's also a group of adults who are looking in the eyes of our children day in and day out, and those are teachers and educators. What if there was a highly interconnected Christian educators network where they are abiding with our Rabbi Jesus, being the teacher, and then linking arms again as they look into the eyes of our children and saying, "You are fully seen, known, and loved." That, again, that can be for any industry. Just imagine what a network for your industry might be and might look like. Now, the last one is called affinity. And affinity is just a term that means similarity, because there's all these catch-all kind of networks. And I'll just give you an example of one. So imagine, instead of a loosely connected community of folks who were retiring, that there was a highly interconnected network of Christ followers who were refiring. A refirement network where time, talent, and treasure was being bestowed back onto the city and into relationships. That wisdom from the older generation was being transferred to the younger, like days of old. And that there was a legacy of grandparenting that was eye to eye and close-knit and for the family. Imagine that. And again, there is as many network possibilities as there are contexts. But networks don't just happen by themselves. These network of networks that are to be thriving and interconnected don't just happen. It requires someone who sees the vision and holds the position and sets the table and calls the invite. Say, "Hey, come, let's talk about it. Let's gather." Now, as a way of transitioning to our friends at MVLF, we're going to show this quick 4-minute video about impact networks where we're gaining a lot of wisdom from. And you're going to hear from these network leaders. You're going to see them as they share how convicted they are that when they imagine and when they practice doing something together that could never be done alone, that it's not one person, one organization, that it is a collective impact of many people aligning and having a shared vision and practice, that big and beautiful and redemptive things can happen. So thank you very much for your time, and we hope that you embody and feel the connections and the possibilities of these networks today. Thanks.